الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا، إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا علما. وأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرزقنا حسن النية وحسن الختام. I praise Allah. I thank Allah for the endowments He has given us, without Allah being obligated to give us anything. And I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to protect his Muslim nation from whatever he feared for it. May Allah give us the sincere intentions and the good ending. So, inshallah, we're going to continue in this explanation of al-Alfiyyah al-Iraqi في سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi's millennial poem on the life of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. So Al-Imam al-Iraqi, he says, يقول راجي من إليه المهرب عبد الرحيم بن الحسين المذنب. Which means the one who hopes in him, to whom is the refuge, says Abdul Rahim ibn al-Hussein, the sinner. So Al-Imam al-Iraqi, may Allah have mercy upon him, he says the one who hopes in him, to whom is the refuge. This means that the composer of these verses, these stanzas, who hopes for the forgiveness of Allah, the all-forgiving, the Holy One, to whom supplication, complete humility, and seeking refuge are due, says. It's narrated in the hadith, لا ملجأ ولا منجى منك إلا إليك. That means there's no refuge and no escape from you, meaning from you, O Allah, إِلَّا إِلَيْكَ, except to you, O Allah. Meaning there is no deliverance and no sanctuary from your punishment except in your mercy. So it's as if the composer here, al-Iraqi, indicates that through this poem and this work, he seeks Allah's acceptance, His forgiveness, His reward, and deliverance from His punishment. Abdul Rahim ibn al-Hussein, so this is his name. He is the author of this book, the Imam Hafidh al-Iraqi, whose name was Zainuddin Abu al-Fadl Abdul Rahim ibn al-Hussein al-Iraqi. Al-Iraqi is in reference to his origin. He was Kurdish ethnically. He lived in Egypt, and that is where he was born. He was a Shafi'i in fiqh and Ash'ari in creed. He was born on the 21st of Jumad al-Ula in the year 725 after al-Hijrah in a place called Munsha'a al-Mihrani, which is on the bank of the Nile River. He grew up in a household of virtue, knowledge, and righteousness. And his father was someone who closely associated with some righteous people. And his mother was known for her devotion to worship and righteousness. Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he had showed great interest and knowledge and persistence in its acquisition. He memorized the Quran and a number of texts in fiqh and hadith by the time he reached the age of 8. He devoted himself to the various religious sciences and to study the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam until that field in particular, the field of hadith, became his predominant field. And he delved deeply into it until he became the most knowledgeable hadith master, hafiz of hadith of his time. He acquired knowledge in a number of countries in Mecca, Medina, Alexandria, in Homs, in Syria, in Gaza, and in other places. He was a student of Hafiz Salahuddin al-Ala'i, and he stuck closely to him. From him, he acquired a high rank in the science of hadith, and he studied fiqh and usul al-fiqh from Jamaluddin al-Isnawi. And al-Isnawi, al-Isnawi is a high-ranking Shafi'i scholar who is very well known. And he used to praise al-Iraqi, and he used to praise his understanding of fiqh. Among his famous students, yani among the students, famous students of al-Hafidh al-Iraqi was Nuruddin al-Haythami. He was his companion, and he was married to the daughter of al-Hafidh al-Iraqi. He is the one who authored the book Majma' az-Zawaid, which is a very important book in the science of hadith. Majma' az-Zawaid, it is a book in which al-Haythami, may Allah have mercy upon him, he cites hadith which are narrated in previous famous collections which were not graded, which were not specified as being authentic or hasan or da'if by the narrators. So he would cite them like the hadith narrated by At-Takrur or hadith mentioned in Musnad al-Bazzar or Ahmad or other books. He would cite them and then he would indicate whether it was sahih. He would state, for example, that all of the narrators are narrators whom al-Bukhari and Muslim narrated from, except so and so is trustworthy. Like that, for example. So it's a very significant work in that field of hadith. Another one of his students is the Hafidh Waliyuddin Abu Zur'a al-Iraqi, who was his son, and al-Hafidh Ahmed ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who is the author of Fath al-Bari, the famous explanation of al-Bukhari. Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he authored a lot of books. One of them is a takhrij of the hadith mentioned in al-Ihya Ulum al-Din by al-Ghazali. A takhrij is a book of hadith in which the author extracts hadith cited in another book, and then he would follow them up with their chains, indicating their authenticity, for example, in many cases, or the lack thereof. When hadith are cited in books of fiqh, usually they're not cited with their chains of narration. So the purpose of the takhrij is for that. He also authored the book At-Sirah wa which is a famous book in the Mustalah, the science of hadith and its terminology, as well as this book, which its title is Ad-Durar as-Saniyah fi as-Siyar az-Zakiyyah. Ad-Durar as-Saniyah fi as-Siyar az-Zakiyyah. As for the creed of Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he was a munazzi. He was someone who declares Allah free and exalted and transcendent beyond similarities to the creation. He is one of the narrators of the hadith الراحمون يرحمهم الرحيم ارحموا أهل الأرض يرحمكم Ahlus Sama, which means the merciful ones, and those who are merciful to others, are shown mercy by Ar-Rahim. Be merciful to those who are on the earth, the inhabitants of the earth, Ahlul Ard, and the inhabitants of the sky will be merciful to you, Ahlus Sama. So this hadith, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhumur Rahim, irhamu ahlal ard, yarhamkum ahlus sama. Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he narrated it in his Amali. Uh, Amali refers to a session of hadith dictation. So a scholar of hadith would gather people or go to a place in which he would narrate hadith, not from a particular book. So in one of these occasions, the scholars would collect these hadith which are narrated, and then they would put it as one book. So this is called the Amali of al-Iraqi. So he narrated this hadith. Among those who are in the chain of that hadith is the Imam and Mujtahid az-Za'farani, who is from the students of al-Shafi'i, radiyallahu anhu. This narration of this hadith explains the other narration, which is narrated by At-Tirmidhi, which is Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhumur Rahman, irhamu man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama. Which means those who are merciful to others, Ar-Rahman will be merciful to them. So the first narration says Ar-Rahim. The second narration, which is in At-Tirmidhi, says Ar-Rahman. Irhamu man fil ard. So instead of saying Ahlul Ard, it says Man fil ard. Instead of saying the inhabitants of the sky, it says Man fil ard. And man can mean alladhi, the one who is, or it can mean alladhina, those who are, linguistically. So man fil ard means those who are on the earth. Be merciful to those who are on the earth. The first narration, be merciful to the inhabitants of the earth. The meaning is the same. Yarhamkum man fis sama. So the first narration says Yarhamkum ahlus sama, and the inhabitants of the sky will be merciful to you. The second narration says Man fi sama, yarhamkum man fi sama. Man fi sama will be men in the sky will be merciful to you. Man here is explained in the first narration, which is the inhabitants of the sky. So men means those who are in the sky, which are the angels. Al-Iraqi, in his millennial poem, which is also in the science of hadith, he says, that the best way to interpret a text is another text. The best way to interpret an ayah is another ayah. Or a hadith. The best way to interpret a hadith is an ayah or another hadith. So the best way to interpret man fi sama is another narration of the same hadith, which is ahlu sama, that it refers to those inhabitants or in the sky, in other words, the angels, and it does not refer to Allah, because it is not valid, it is not permissible to say that Allah is ahl, is an inhabitant or inhabitants, plural. This is not valid, it's not permissible. He says, Abdul Rahim ibn al-Husayn al-Mudhnibu, the sinner. Al-Mudhnibu means the sinner. So Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he described himself as a sinner, meaning disobedient, out of humility and modesty. May Allah have mercy upon him. Otherwise, he was known for his righteousness and piety. But this is the habit of the righteous. They always accuse themselves and describe themselves as deficient out of humility. May Allah raise their ranks. For the one who accuses himself of shortcomings is motivated to increase in acts of worship. The one who accuses himself of shortcomings is motivated to increase in acts of obedience. It's narrated that one of the righteous men, he said, "Oh, so and so, be humble to Allah, for whoever is humble to Allah, the Exalted, in this world, Allah will elevate him on the day of resurrection." Yani when you humble yourself, you lower yourself. So the one who lowers himself in the dunya, Allah will elevate him in the hereafter. The one who is humble with his brothers has a high rank with Allah, while the arrogant person has something in his heart, meaning a disease in his heart. Now, Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, we said that he was born in the year 725 after Al-Hijrah, and in Egypt. And this was the era, so he was born in the era of the Mamluks of Egypt. Now, the Mamluks of Egypt, there were two groups of them. One group was called the Bahri Turks, and then you had the Borji Circassian Mamluks. Now, during the era of the Mamluks, Cairo was the center of government. Although there were deputies that were present in the Levant, the center of the Islamic government was in Cairo. And each of them had broad powers to manage what they ruled, these deputies and the sultans of the Mamluks. And they had under their command what they needed in terms of soldiers, slaves, and administrative offices. Sometimes, though, the deputy in Asham in the Levant would rebel or revolt against the Sultan. And sometimes he would assume the place of the Sultan. Now, the Mamluks, as their name indicates, were originally Turkish slaves or slaves of Turkish origin. The Sultan as-Salih Ayyub, he began to bring them, and he chose for them the island of Rawdah, which is in the middle of the Nile River in Cairo, to be their resident. Because of that, they were called Bahri Turks or Bahri Mamluk. As-Salih Ayyub, he was the son of Al-Kamal, Al-Malik wal-Kamal, or Al-Malik wal-Kamil, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, Al-Adil ibn Ayyub. He was the one who took power after his brother Al-Adil was deposed in Cairo in 637 after Al-Hijrah. And he governed for a period of time. And he was a very brave person. He is the one who fought the Crusaders. Sometimes they're called Faranj, Franks, when they raided Dimyat, which is north of Cairo in Egypt. And they occupied it. He died in 647 in Mansoura, which is also in northern Egypt. But he is buried in Cairo. He is the one who built the Rawdah castle in Cairo. This Sultan, as-Salih Ayyub, he brought these Turkish slaves to Cairo, and they were named Bahri Mamluks. And what he did was he worked on raising them uh, to love the religion, to support it, and to venerate its scholars. And they were taught to master the arts of war and to be loyal, to be a loyal entourage and a trustworthy support that would not betray him. Yani these are children that were brought up for this purpose. As they were raised, their influence grew stronger in the Islamic State in Cairo. And it wasn't long after that until they assumed power after the murder of Al-Mu'azzam, Turan Shah. Turan Shah, it means, his name was Ghiyath-ud-Din Turan Shah. Turan Shah means King of the East. He's the son of Sultan as-Salih Ayyub. He was actually killed by the Bahri Mamluks in 648 after Al-Hijrah. And his father thought that he would not be able to control the kingdom, but would be killed. So the Mamluks, they killed him. So after they killed him, the Bahri Mamluks, they assumed power over Egypt. The first of them was Izzuddin Aybak, and his title was Al-Mu'izz. Al-Mu'izz. Aybak, his name was Aybak ibn Abdullah. He was called as-Salihi. Remember, the one who, their previous owner, was as-Salih Ayyub. So they called those who he owned, those Mamluks that he owned, as-Salihiyun. So he was called as-Salihi, Aybak ibn Abdullah as-Salihi. Although Aybak al-Mu'izz was freed by as-Salih, when he took control, and he became a notable, even before that, he was a notable leader under as-Salih Ayyub. And he made him a commander of the armies after the murder of al-Mu'azzam Turan Shah. He married his father's wife. Her name was Shajara ad-Dur. Shajarat ad-Dur. So when he took power in Egypt, he was given the title Al-Malik Al-Mu'izz. Then he had proposed to the daughter of another king, another ruler, named Badruddin Lu'lu', who was the ruler of Mosul. So his wife became angry with him. Then 5 of her servants killed him in the bathroom. And that was in the year 655. Although he was a brave person. So after Al-Mu'izz was killed, as you can tell, one of the things which is good to do, and you find this in many books nowadays, a history along with a biography of the author, the history of the time in which the author lived is presented, along with like mentioning notable scholars who lived during that time. And sometimes the editor of the book would speak about the social and economic situation. We're not going to do all of that. We're not going to speak about all of the various scholars, and there were many who lived at the time of Hafidh al-Iraqi, nor the economical situation of that time. But I thought it would be befitting to speak about some of the Mamluks who, since this is the time in which al-Hafidh al-Iraqi lived in. So the first of them, as we said, of the Bahri Mamluks was Izzuddin Aybak, or Al-Malik al-Mu'izz. After he was killed by the servants of his wife, as you can notice, there are many events in history where, just like a soap opera, a a wife would get jealous and her servants would kill her husband, who was the Khalifa or the Sultan, or uh, this one would have his son killed, or the brother would kill his brother, or the nephew would kill his uncle. Many things like this occurred throughout the Islamic history. So after Al-Mu'izz came his son, Al-Mansur, Nuruddin Ali. Al-Mansur Nuruddin Ali. Then Al-Muzaffar Saifuddin Qutuz. He is Qutuz with a ta. He is the one who defeated the Mongols in Ain Jalut in 658 after Al-Hijrah. This king of the Mamluks, he was known as Al-Malik al-Muzaffar Saifuddin Qutuz ibn Abdullah al-Mu'izzi. Al-Mu'izzi. He was one of the most noble Mamluks of Al-Mu'izz. He was fair-skinned. He had red hair with a full beard. And he was a brave horseman. He was very gentle, and the people, they loved him. So he defeated the Mongols. Sometimes they're called Tatars, at the Ain Jalut, which is in Asham, which is in Palestine. Or, yeah, it's in Asham. It's closer to Syria. In this battle, when he saw that the Muslims were retreating, he had threw his helmet from his head and he charged towards the enemy. So you had at that time some of the sultans, they were not just people who would order armies to go out and fight or to send armies. Many of these Mamluk sultans were very brave and they would go out and they would fight themselves. So he fought against the Mongols and Allah granted him victory. There were some people who rebelled against him while he was returning to Egypt, and he was killed in 658. Yeah, and he didn't stay in power for a year, and he was killed. After him, the leadership of the Mamluks was consolidated by Ruknuddin al-Zahir Baybars al-Bunduqdari, who had eliminated the opposition of Sanjar al-Halabi, and he is the one who quashed the uprising of the Shiites in Egypt. So this Sultan Ruknuddin al-Zahir Baybars al-Ala'i al-Bunduqdari al-Salihi, he is someone who had many victories in battle. He was called Sahib al-Futuhat, like the owner of conquest or possessor of conquest. He has a lot of stories written about him and a lot of monuments. He was born in the land of Tibet Jaq, which is in the land of the Turks. And he was captured, enslaved, and sold in Sivas. Then he was transferred to Cairo. And the prince Alauddin al-Bunduqdar bought him and then freed him. And he continued to rise. So And as you know, this slavery among those people, how the slaves were treated, was not like what many of us are used to when we hear about slavery in terms of American slavery. So, al-Zahir Baybars, he rose in rank until he became the commander of the armies in Egypt during the time of al-Muzaffar Qutuz. And he fought the Tartars, the Mongols, with Qutuz in Ain Jalut. After Qutuz was killed, he took over the Sultanate and he personally led wars until his bravery became a proverb. And he had, days of renaissance in Islam, if you want. And he had some terrible wars with the Mongols, as well as the Crusaders. He had conquered 40 fortresses from the Crusaders by force, and he is the one who opened the land of Nubia, which is in the south of Egypt, going into the Sudan, and the area of Dongola, which is in the Sudan, which had not been opened by the Muslims before that. There are many monuments throughout Egypt and Asham that he built, buildings, and many stories about him and his bravery. He's buried in Damascus, and his grave is well known. He died in the year 676 after Al-Hijrah. If you've ever heard of the Zahiriyya library in Damascus, which is very famous, it is named after him, Al-Zahir Baybars Al-Bunduqdari, rahimahullah. So we said that he had eliminated the opposition of Sanjar al-Halabi. So this person, Sanjar al-Halabi, he was called Alamuddin al-Halabi. He was the administrator of Halab during the time of Ali ibn al-Mu'izz. When Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad, and after that he sent his son with an army to Halab. So the Umara, the emirs of the state of Halab, the judges, and the senior sheikhs, they gathered and they deposed Ali ibn al-Mu'izz. Then they appointed Qutuz as the sultan. Then Sanjar al-Halabi became the deputy of Damascus. Now, when he heard that Qutuz had died and Baybars, al-Zahir Baybars, became the sultan, he didn't like that. So he refused to obey Baybars, and he declared himself to be al-Malik al-Mujahid. In the year 659, al-Zahir Baybars, he sent Jamaluddin al-Muhammadi to turn the people against Senjar, which he did. And several of the emirs, they came out and they called for al-Zahir. So Senjar fought them, but he was defeated. So he fled to the castle of Damascus, then to Ba'alabak, then he was sent to Egypt and imprisoned in the castle. Then afterwards, he was freed, and then he was appointed as deputy of Halab. This was how his condition was. It fluctuated between being in position, being in prison, participating in jihad against the Crusaders, and expelling them from the coastal lands in the days of al-Ashraf until he died in Egypt in the year 692. As for the Shiite uprising in Cairo in the year 657 after al-Hijrah, there is a man who was known as al-Qurani. He was arrested and taken to Izzuddin ibn Abd salam for any people reported hearing blasphemy and heresy from him. So he was sent to the Muslim judge, Al-Izz ibn Abd salam, who then released him. So the implication of that is either his blasphemy was not confirmed for the Muslim judge, or it was confirmed, but he repented. So he was released. After he was released, he settled, he went to live on the Red Hill, Al-Jabal al-Ahmar, which is close to or inside of Madinatul Nasr, Nasr city, which is essentially a part of Cairo or metropolitan Cairo. It's close to the airport. So in the following year, a group of Black Africans and Zukbidariya, and a Zukbidariya are people who carry weapons in front of the Sultan during ceremonial processions. So these people, a group of Black Africans, a group of these um, ceremonial guardsmen, if you want, and a group of servants, they revolted. So they roamed around Cairo shouting, "Ya Ali." They broke into sword shops, taking weapons. They broke into stables and stole horses. And all of this was instigated by this man called Al-Qurani, who appeared to people as a Zahid, an aesthetic, who lived in a dome on the mountain. And he like as if he is a monk. So the servants, they used to frequent him, and he incited them to rise up against the state. He would give them fiefs and make contracts for them. But when they revolted, and they did it at night, and it didn't last, they were not strong enough. The army defeated them, and then they crucified them, and they hung them outside of Bab Zuwayla. So this also happened during the time of al-Zahir Baybars. Al-Zahir Baybars is also the one who restored the Abbasid Caliphate. So what did we say? We said that the Mongols had destroyed Baghdad. And remember, they killed the Khalifa 3 years after the Khalifa was killed in Baghdad. So there was no Khalifa for 3 years. 3 years later, Al-Mustansir showed up in Cairo. Al-Mustansir, his name was Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Zahir al-Abbasi. after the Khalifa was killed, who was called al-Musta'sim. Al-Musta'sim, he was the last Abbasid Caliph of Iraq. When al-Mustansir, Ahmed ibn Muhammad, came to Egypt and his lineage was verified, al-Zahir Baybars paid allegiance to him as the Caliph. Then the head judge, Qadi Ibn Bint al-A'az or Ibn Bint al-A'iz, he paid allegiance to him, and the rest of the scholars according to their rank. Now, this Al-Mustansir was very brave and courageous, and he was well respected. And he was, uh, if, if you want to, this is not correct, but so this is not correct. I'll repeat it. This is not correct. But if you want to consider a person according to their skin complexion, he was the first black caliph. He was the first black caliph. But he was an Arab. Although, and many Arabs, they are very dark. Many Arabs just go to Yemen and go to certain parts of Al-Hijaz even. They are very dark. Al-Mustansir had dark skin. And the way it's described, he had black skin. Aswadul lawn, not asmarul lawn, not swarthy, but in fact black skin, because his mother was Ethiopian. He was an Arab. He was from Banu Abbas, but his mother was Ethiopian, and because of that, he had black skin. But notice, the color of his skin meant nothing. It meant nothing. It was irrelevant. His lineage was confirmed that he was, in fact, from the lineage of the Abbasids, and he was paid allegiance to as the Khalifa. So when he was paid allegiance to as the Khalifa, the people rejoiced, and it was announced that he was the new Khalifa, and this was considered a good sign. So Sultan al-Zahir Baybars, who, although he was not the Khalifa, really he was the person who had the power. He organized a group of Atabegs, like military commanders, security guards, secretaries, and whatever he needed. And he set them up in the castle. Afterward, al-Mustansir headed back to Iraq with an army, and he marched at the head of the army to fight the Mongols. But the army was ambushed and defeated, and it was not known what happened to him. Either he was captured or he was killed, and this was near a place called Hint. And this was in the year 660 after the Hijrah. And Allah knows what happened to him. So Al-Zahir Baybars, he defeated the Mongols. He drove them away from Egypt and the Levant. He fortified the borders and the outposts of the state. And he took from their castles and cities, which are among their strongest strongholds. And he took from the Crusaders. He overcame the Crusaders. And he is the one who paved the way for the end of their rule after Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. And no one damaged, destroyed the Crusaders after Salahuddin al-Ayyubi more than al-Zahir Baybars. After him came al-Mansur Qalawun. Now, al-Mansur Qalawun, he was called Saifuddin Abu al-Ma'ali al-Malik al-Mansur al-Turki. And he was one of the greatest princes during the time of al-Zahir. He became the king in 678 after al-Hijrah. And he also fought against the Mongols. There is a famous battle in which he defeated the Mongols in Homs in Syria. He even invaded Europe more than once, and he conquered Tripoli and its surroundings. He built a large school and a hospital, but I don't know the name of the school. He also built a hospital in Cairo. He died in the year 689 after al-Hijrah. So al-Mansur Qalawun, he began importing and purchasing Mamluks from the Circassian race, which was then widespread in the northern Caspian Sea and the eastern Black Sea. And he settled them in the castle towers in Cairo. And because of that, they acquired the title the Borji Mamluks. So the first group were the Bahri Mamluks, and the second were the Borji, and Borj means tower, were the Borji Mamluks. So their state began in the year 784 after al-Hijrah under the rule of al-Zahir Baruq, and it continued until the year 923 after al-Hijrah, when it ended with the killing of Tuman Bey II at the hands of the Ottomans, which inshallah I'll give you more details next week. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam wa ahkam. And Allah knows best.
يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله احملوني يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا احملوني احملوني إلى الرسول احملوني إلى الرسول وروحه يا حبيب الله من شفه الغرام المعنى يا حبيبي يا سيدي يا رسول الله يا حبيبي قد ذاب قلبي اشتياقا يا حبيبي قد ذاب قلبي اشتياقا ذان الصب في هواكم جريح يا حبيب الله هل لي إلى زورة فأطفي ظليلي أو إلى نظرة فتشفى